So what is the deal with Premier League referees? Premier League has had VAR for around 5 years now, maybe a bit more, and since it was first introduced, it's always had problems, and it's never been the technology that's been the problem. It's typically almost always the people operating it. From my recollection, from when I first started seeing it myself in the league, Liverpool were playing Wolves at home, and there was two distinctly controversial decisions. One was a handball for Liverpool that arguably could have been disallowed, and the other one was an offside for Wolves, which was controversially chalked off, and it shouldn't have been. Now, this isn't a good start for the Premier League with VAR. Unfortunately, it seemed to have set the tone for the next couple of years, because things haven't really improved since. Over the years, there's been several mistakes made by the PGMOL regularly to do with VAR that have caused significant results to change in certain teams' favour. There's many I could go on about, some of which include the Doku high foot challenge on McAllister, or the weak penalty that was given against Man United in the Manchester derby. You could also talk about the Kovacic double tackle on Odegaard and Rice, and was only given a yellow between both, and arguably should have been sent off both tackles. There are lots of instances where the PGMOL has consistently slipped up, and us, the fans, are the ones who end up paying as a result. To go in a bit further on a couple of these examples, one that's quite distinctive to me because it affected me quite a lot in terms of how my team performed that year, and it was the Luis Diaz goal that was ruled out for offside, which was wrongly ruled out. And I remember watching the game and watching the VAR graphics come up, and I was expecting this to be a goal. You know, there didn't seem to be any problem with it, and the VAR graphics come off the screen and plays resumed. We don't see any close-up of the referee saying it's a goal or it's not, and plays just continue, and even the pundits are confused. They're like, we've got no explanation here. And eventually, obviously, the PGMOL give an official apology, and they release the comms, and it just demonstrates a lot of incompetence from the referees, the lack of ability to be able to tell the on-pitch referee stop the game and give the goal just because players resumed. It just seems unbelievable that they couldn't stop the game and give the goal, because momentum was with Liverpool. It would have stayed with Liverpool with that goal. Spurs shortly after did score, and we did well to equalise, but we lost ultimately from a really unfortunate own goal, and that could have really shifted the dynamic of the league at that point, because we'd just come off the back of a very poor season, and we'd started the season well, and for us to have lost that game, we lost momentum, and it meant we were always third in the three-team title race, and we were never really considered a proper challenger, and it was always Arsenal or City, and it could have been Arsenal, City or Liverpool if we hadn't have had that goal wrongly chalked off. The Kovacic double tackle is another decision which I cannot believe happened. Around 25 minutes in, Kovacic goes in for a very rash tackle on Odegaard from behind with his studs up and completely takes out the player. And I think almost anyone would go, that's got to be checked for a red card. And it wasn't. It was given a yellow, which I think a lot of people were frustrated about, but I think kind of moved on quite quickly after, until 5 minutes later when he did almost the exact same thing on Rice. And you could even argue there was malicious intent, because if you watch the tackle, you can see Kovacic is almost missing Rice entirely, and he moved his leg across to contact Rice's ankle, and it seems like an undeniable booking at a minimum, and he isn't even booked and sent off for it. The game ends 0-0. Arsenal could have won that game if they'd have gotten Kovacic sent off, and so that set the tone for the league again that season, and it was really unfortunate for Arsenal not to have gotten that red card. Another poor decision was Doku's high foot on Alexis McAllister in the very late stages of a Liverpool versus Manchester City game at Anfield. And this was a game where if Liverpool were able to win, they could consider themselves back in the title race, as they'd fallen behind the pack a little bit. and with a win they would gain on City, and it could have resulted in them potentially even winning the league. Potentially not, because you could say they were going to fall off anyway because they'd just run out of steam. But either way, that challenge that Doku made on McAllister, studs up in the box, it was waved away by the referee and said, nope, not a penalty for me. And I just can't see how the VAR room didn't go, hey, we need you to look at this is bad. And they just went along with what the on-pitch referee said, and ultimately it cost Liverpool a lot. Another controversial decision was Ake's goal. That wasn't disallowed against Fulham when he heads the ball into the goal. He scores from a corner where, as he's headed the ball, Nathan Ake is clearly and obviously offside, and it moves into his path, and it looks like he makes an obvious effort to kick the ball in some way, which could very possibly have put off the goalkeeper, which meant he could have saved that shot if Akanji wasn't there, and the goal was not ruled out. And I just thought I'd quickly add one more thing. I'm actually just doing a bit of post-production, but I thought I'd just quickly add one more major refereeing scandal or debacle, whatever you want to call it, that I've seen that has made a direct impact on the league, and it was the handball that Rodri committed in the penalty box against Everton, which should have potentially caused them to equalise, and it could have meant that by Liverpool winning on the final day of the season like they did, would have confirmed them to win the title, and that would have been that. So you could argue that one decision caused Liverpool to lose a league. Personally, as a Liverpool fan, fuming about it. I don't know how I didn't think about bringing it up before, but here it is now. Another refereeing controversy that happened quite recently, only in the past couple of days, was the McAllister head collision in the Liverpool vs Manchester United game, where the referee stood only 10 metres away at most, claimed not to see a Van Dijk elbow connect to the back of McAllister's head, causing him to crumple to the ground, which should have been considered a serious head injury and therefore immediate halt of play. However, play continued, and ultimately Mbeumo scored as a result of this incompetency from that referee, who was Michael Oliver. Now, of course, I will clarify, Michael Oliver is a problem in officiating in England. However, that doesn't mean it is only him. We see terrible refereeing performances by not just him, we see it from Simon Hooper, we see it from Anthony Taylor, and we see it from plenty of other referees. However, we see it with Michael Oliver time and time again, and nothing is really ever said about it, specifically him. No one calls him out consistently except for the fans. Just going to give an interesting statistic, take it as you will. I'm not suggesting anything by saying this, it is just a fact. Michael Oliver has refereed around 50 professional games for Manchester City. In those 50 games, he has not once produced a red card for a Man City player, which could be coincidence, but in 50 games, that is over 4,500 minutes of refereeing Manchester City, 4,500 minutes, and that's not including added time. He has not once produced a red card for Manchester City. Now let that sink in. I mean, you've got to think, it can't go on like this, can it really?
It can.
It just seems like something has got to happen. The penny has got to drop at some point. Somebody has got to be sacked, because it feels as if nothing serious like that happens, we will be stuck with terrible officiating every week, week in, week out. And I've given plenty of examples already, but even then, I could give you so many more, because every week we have problems with handballs all the time. We don't know what a handball is at this point anymore. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, before the international break, Gabriel sticks his arm up in the air in the penalty box right towards the end of the game. from a cross that's come in, and it's come off his shin and it's hit his elbow or his arm. And what has been argued is that because it deflected off his shin does not count as a penalty. What confuses me is that there was such little of a deflection off his shin, it was always going to hit his arm no matter what. Yes, the rulebook says if it deflects off another body part and onto an arm, then yes, it's not a penalty. However, the context needs to be applied, and it cannot just be taken at face value and accepted like that. Context is relevant in these scenarios, and that is probably why we have so much inconsistency when it comes to handballs. I remember last season when Newcastle played Bournemouth scored a goal, and it was quite late on in the game, and I think it was Otara who ended up getting it in the goal just barely on his shoulder, and the goal is eventually ruled out because apparently that's considered his arm, but it hit him on his sleeve, and so that's considered a goal because, well, that's just the rules. So why is it changing? If that's the case, you could have immediately said, because this is before VAR, you watch Balotelli use his shoulder to score that goal where he's just stood at the edge. He just goes like that, Why has that not been ruled out? That's basically the same thing. He's just used a different side of the shoulder. He's used that part, Otara's used this part. It makes no difference really. Goal's a goal. Why is it different, That's one of the most famous goals of all time, and no one's ever gone, oh, that shouldn't have counted or anything like that. So why is it any different that Otara's goal is disallowed? Why is it different? The point is, the Premier League officiators need to pull the finger out their arse, because at this point, people will get sick enough that there will be rallies and protests and whatever to try and stop the officiating from being so poor, because it can't keep going on like this.
It can.
And eventually, we're going to need to use technology to deal with these VAR issues. I don't know why we haven't done it already, but a robot could very easily draw lines across a pitch and decide whether a goal is offside or onside, see an image of a player and easily decide whether it's a handball or not, if it's hit their shoulder or whether it's hit their arm, whether it's far enough past their sleeve to be considered a handball, things like that. That could be programmed into a robot so it knows every single time. Why we haven't got this, I don't know. Will we ever know? Who knows? We can ask these questions. Will we get the answers? I doubt it. But yeah, it's just totally unacceptable. Michael Oliver, he needs to be sacked, or he needs to be majorly reprimanded for how bad he's been over the past couple of years, and it is undeniably abysmal, and abysmal is being kind. It's been so consistently abysmal. It is unforgivable, and it should be done by robots. That's my opinion. It should all be done by robots. You obviously can't have a robot on the pitch as a referee, but you should have an earpiece in, someone in the VAR room, but they are just translating across what the computer is telling them, and they tell it to the referee. So they go, well, the computer's saying you should come have a look at this. And even if the referee on field says no, if the computer disagrees, the on-field referee's decision should be overruled. It isn't a mates rates game, this thing with the refereeing. That's what they say, and that's basically what they say. Mark Goldbridge says that. He says we should be having mates rates, and he's absolutely right. You shouldn't be looking out for your mates. This is his job. It's not like you're doing it as a friendly hobby. It's not like you're there until it's fun and then once it's not, you piss off. It's your job. You've got to make sure everything is done by the book properly, and it's as simple as that. I know this was a bit of a rant, but I feel like it needs being said. Plenty of people talk about it, but what more does one voice really, matter? But might not help, but it might not hurt either. So let me know your thoughts. I'd be very, very surprised if you disagree with me, but if you do, that's fine. And thoughts in the comments below. Like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and see you in the next one.